his sculptures. I got to go upstate with him into this sort of hangar where men were working on a 20-foot black curl. I was never happier. I loved listening to the craftsmen talking with each other. God, Frank said. How did you meet him? Ruth said, I was one of the groupies who hung around whenever he came to New York. Years later, I visited him in the Italian Alps in his place. It was like a Mesa Verde cave dwelling, if you can imagine a Bauhaus cave carved out of the Italian mountainside. Did you know him? Me? No, Frank said. I saw him once coming out of a restaurant on East 17th Street, and I walked behind him for a number of blocks. He went into a grocery, and I watched him through the window. He came out, went into a liquor store, and bought a bottle. Then he got into a bus going west. Ruth told her friends. I had the thrill of thinking, so that's what Dario did on the way over to my place, like watching a scene happen 30 years ago. But then Frank said he'd been in his 20s and too shy to catch up and tell this man that he loved his show, so it must have been Dario's early show, years before the one man at the Guggenheim, before I even knew him. I told Frank that Dario might have been grateful. He used to talk about the desolation of that early success and his first New York visit before he knew people. Frank said the gallery had just acquired a Delessy. Which one? Called Hatch. I remember. I remember the bunch of us sitting with a bottle of Malbec, trying to come up with a name for a new Delessy piece to replace Untitled. It had to be what Clement Greenberg called a word independent of meaning, in the days when our favorite cartoon was a museum-goer wiping a tender tear in front of a Russian constructivist sculpture. You don't know till you try how hard it is to think of words that signify no object or feeling or value. I'd wake up in the night with the sense of triumph, bout, but that means strife. Upstanding got shot down because it commented on standing down. There are so many stories, I said. Frank said that I was a resource and asked if he could take me to lunch. But the day of the lunch, he called for a rain check. Major snafu at the gallery. I've invited him up for a drink. The March ladies' lunch went out to Bessie's in Old Rockingham. Frank Bruno had not made it to Ruth's for that drink. Someone from the gallery called. Frank was out of state and would call as soon as he got back. The friend said, Tell us the Delessy stories you were going to tell Frank Bruno. Ruth said, Here's something I didn't understand when I was visiting Dario. I called his attention to a man, a farmer, sitting on the pavement in the village square with a little goat on his lap. The man held the animal's hoof, the way you might hold a child's or a young girl's hand. Dario said, He's going to take the goat to be slaughtered, which I always remembered afterwards, the way you remember something that doesn't add up. Ruth said, Dario took me on a climb. He climbed like a mountaineer, 1 foot after another at an even pace. I impressed myself by overtaking him. Then I had to sit down and recover my breath while he moved steadily on and up. And the terrifying drive up the mountain road to see the oldest houses on the highest range. You have to understand that Dario was the world's worst driver. And on the way back, we ran out of petrol, because you are statistically more likely to come upon a wayside crucifix memorializing someone's plunge to death than a gas pump. The locals, unlike Dario, drive with a spare can of gas. Dario and I sat with the car door open, and we sat until the milkman's truck came up the road. The milkman siphoned off enough gas to get us back to